Okay. Next, we have superintendent's report.
Great.
Pull that up.
Thank you, Ms. Howerton. I'd first like to invite Ms. Blackman to come up and give us a little overview of our 5 hours of required instruction. So, Ms. Blackman, if you'll come on up. Good evening, thank you.
I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the required instruction. In the 1920 school year, we had some legislation that required 5 hours of required instruction for mental health awareness. During the 21-22 school year, we heard some concerns from individuals in the community about the information that, was being shared. At that point, during the 21-22 school year, we paused. We had our mental health therapist review the information that was being shared so that we could ensure that whatever was required was the information that was being shared at that time. As the year came to an end, and that would have been the spring of 22, so that was last school year, last spring, there was a request that could we overall review the information that was being shared. And as a response to that request, it was, yes, we can certainly do that. And so the Comprehensive Health Committee was formed, and the second step, or this next challenge for that committee, was to review those particular information. And they did just that. They reviewed all of the information, and they came to the conclusion that we want to discontinue that, which is the purpose of reviewing it and making that decision. When they made the decision to discontinue that, because it is required instruction, we needed to make a next step on that. It's also important to note that during that same time, in November of 22, there was an amendment or a change, a revision to the state board rule, the Florida Administrative Code, that changed some of the language in it from the mental health awareness to the resiliency topics. So there were, in that rule, there were not only language, but there were topics listed, and there were some adjustments to it. So that committee knew that the adjustments had been made, and we needed to make some steps moving forward with it. We decided to discontinue what was being used, and we needed to make some decisions, okay, what moving forward. Okeechobee, as with many other districts around the state, actually produced some of their own kind of materials. That district was kind enough to say, let's take a look and see what they look like. They're not perfect. They weren't perfect. The committee said that they weren't perfect, and they actually said, we think we can make, I'm going to use these words, our own Highlands County one. At that point, it was getting close to the semester, and that is a very large lift to be able to write curriculum for many hours of that. So the committee took that into consideration and said, is this something we could use for this school year to give us some time to plan a quality, what we wanted to be our Highlands County own? Could we do that? Secure some funding to pay individuals to help with the writing of that, and to also do a professional production of it. There was conversation that wouldn't it be meaningful if we had leaders in our community that our kids know, that was the face, that were saying these things and encouraging these pieces of it. And absolutely that was the buy-in. But for this school year, could we go forward with what we had available to move forward with the required instruction? And the committee members responded that there would be an agreement for us to move forward with that for that school year. With their looking at how we could make our own Highlands County own, I did reach out to HEC. I see Ms. Garcia in the audience today, and they recently had received a rather large grant. I believe she might be doing a little bit of an update in a little bit also to really do that same thing, look at that building resiliency. It is an initiative from the Department of Education, and there are other components to it outside of just the 5 hours required instruction. And shared with Ms. Garcia, Ms. Garcia, our community wants to make our own. Our community wants to do that, but we need some money to be able to pay people to write it, and we need some money to put to it a professional production of it. And she did just that. She wrote those line items into that to make sure that that could happen. And I actually spoke with her, and where we're at with it, it's there, it's secured in it. There, we are at a pause for DOE to finalize the actual resilience items for us to use. Let's see. So as we had come to the decision as the group to move forward with those videos that were available to us that Okeechobee had shared, I had our school mental health providers, school counselors work together as teams to say, okay, as the mental health providers, your school counselors, you look through them, make some recommendations from your professional perspective about how we would roll those out as far as a sequence for those. Make sure we've covered our required instruction topics and move forward. And we did just that. We rolled them out to the schools based on those recommendations. Shortly after that was rolled out, we heard people say, hey, we want you to consider some of the requests that were asked about are these publicly posted on our website? At that point, they were not. Within, I believe it was the week, they were all publicly posted and they're currently available for review on there. So heard the concern about can they be publicly posted? And yes, they currently are. Another request was families, is there a way that we can let families know in advance when that is going to happen? Absolutely, we can do that. As part of letting them know, schools, we crafted a letter that schools would customize for their way of showing and knowing it, and those went out to families within the next couple of days, so that went out. Another request that came in was who reviewed them, and did mental health people review it? And my first response was yes, our school counselors did review them. There are mental health providers, and in Florida, school counselors, school social workers, and school psychologists are considered school mental health providers. And their request was, did our licensed mental health therapists review those? And I said, at that point she had not, but we can, and we do have 4 on staff. I'm happy to have that individual make the review. And a couple of them have reviewed them. That has been going on. And as most recently, they've reviewed them. And not unlike what many of the committee members said, this wouldn't be the way we necessarily would have stated, or we would have changed the wording on this a little bit. But for the most part, we understand where we're at. We're good to go, move forward with this required instruction for the 22-23 school year. There were 2 videos that they happened to do with the human trafficking pieces of it. And their feedback was those human trafficking, which is part of the required instruction, might be better suited for our 11th and 12th grade students and not necessarily for our younger students. So the way that they are currently developed or produced, I would say, it wouldn't be a possibility to separate them out. So the request was, okay, that is your professional requirement. What could we put instead of? There is an additional video that they reviewed from the Okeechobee site that said, this one is much more. We think this will go 6 through, not K. I didn't, that was a flip. I didn't mean to say kindergarten. We're not doing it in kindergarten. We could do that. It would be appropriate in the 6 through 12. We could replace that. The other one that would leave us with about 30 more minutes of required instruction. And they said we could do the lift of a script for about 30 minutes. That's a different lift. I'm doing it for this school year, as opposed to a writing of 10 hours of video in the script and the production of it. And so that's where we are at this point, to do the switch out of the 2 that the individuals from the mental health lens said we think it would be more appropriate for older. We can't split. We can switch the one out, and then we would propose that let us write another 30 minutes of some instruction there. It doesn't have to be about particularly the human trafficking need. In the rule, it says all of these topics, and all of the topics cumulatively need to have a cumulative of 5 hours. So they can write a script about other resilient types of things. You'll notice there's things like grit, that kind of stuff that's in there, so that we can move forward with the 22-23 school year with the full intention of doing our Highlands County, here's our people, here's who our kids know, respect, understand. We write the script for DOE will let us know the specifics about it, and we have the funding to do that on a professional level.
Thank you so much,
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Blackman, and thank you for being so responsive to things that come your way. I appreciate that. Great. Next, I would like to ask Mr. Layfield